Hellwig's divisive behavior behind the scenes would cut his reign short and leave behind a complicated legacy steeped in controversy.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the most tragic real-life stories to affect professional wrestling's biggest stars throughout the industry's history.
He didn't want me in wrestling, period. In fact, he got me fired a couple places.
Number 20. Verne Gagne. If there was a Mount Rushmore for pro wrestling promoters, Gagne would be in contention. After all, he founded the American Wrestling Association in 1960 until it closed in 1991. The promotion was a launching pad for many icons, including Hulk Hogan, Bob Backlund, and Ric Flair. However, Gagne's circumstances took a downswing in his later life. In 2009, suffering from Alzheimer's disease, he was living at a nursing facility in Bloomington, Minnesota. Gagne got into an altercation with a fellow resident, 97-year-old Helmut Gutmann. The wrestler reportedly picked up Gutmann and slammed him, causing the older resident to break his hip. Sadly, he died from complications. Due to his illness and not remembering the interaction, Gagne wasn't charged with murder. Number 19. Chris Kanyon. Who better than Kanyon? Not many. Making his name at WCW, Kanyon would move to the WWE when they bought out the company in 2001. He left the company in 2004 and made sporadic appearances on the indie circuit. During this time, Kanyon came out as gay.
Kanyon eventually begins treatment for bipolar disorder and finally feels empowered to open up about his sexuality.
He soon began writing a book about his struggles of hiding his sexuality in the wrestling business.
He had been discussing on and off being an openly gay wrestler. He wanted to really be a role model in doing it.
On top of dealing with that, Kanyon was battling bipolar disorder, leading to him admitting in an interview about the drastic measures he nearly took. In 2010, after Kanyon hadn't been heard from by his family, his brother went to his home and discovered he'd taken his own life.
He's horribly missed.
Number 18. The Plane Ride from Hell. Flying back from the pay-per-view Insurrection from England in 2002, the journey would go down in infamy for all the wrong reasons, mostly thanks to the open bar and allegations of substance use. On top of practical jokes, Brock Lesnar and Curt Hennig decided to do some mile-high amateur wrestling, causing the duo to thump against the emergency exit, which is terrifying.
And then they hit the emergency door. This was a big boom. Everyone jumped up.
Michael Hayes and JBL allegedly fought, leading to X-Pac cutting Hayes' hair while he slept.
I remember the big pop, and it was like him holding up the title when he had the ponytail.
Allegedly, Scott Hall and Goldust harassed the female flight attendants verbally, and Ric Flair exposed himself. Several wrestlers left the company in the aftermath, including Hall and Hennig. In 2004, the flight workers sued the WWE, which was settled out of court.
Exposure of these scandalous events would mark a turning point for the WWF.
Number 17. Scott Hall. Known as Razor Ramon in the then WWF before switching to his real name when debuting for rivals WCW, the bad guy was an underrated treasure in the ring. However, Hall had his demons, resulting in substance issues, which could be traced back to a traumatic experience he had in 1983. Shortly before he debuted as a wrestler, Hall was a bartender in Orlando, Florida, where he argued with Rodney Turner. Reportedly, Hall had made moves on Turner's wife. After Turner vandalized Hall's car, the wrestler confronted him, who then pulled out a firearm.
And he was reaching for the gun, so I reached for it too.
Hall managed to take it from him before fatally shooting Turner. While Hall was arrested for the incident, the charges were dropped. However, he was still diagnosed with PTSD.
A guy's dead, and I'm the reason, and this is bad.
Number 16. Daffney. After making her name in WCW, Daffney became one of TNA's best women wrestlers during her stints there, all while dealing with bipolar disorder. Sadly, due to injuries, including several concussions, she had to retire from wrestling in 2011. Daffney sued TNA for unsafe working conditions and medical compensation, which was settled out of court in 2013. In a 2017 book, she detailed her struggles from repeated concussions. In 2021, Daffney live-streamed on Instagram. She gave a goodbye speech and requested her brain be studied for chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
I want to be studied. I want the future generations to know, don't do stupid shit like me.
When the police arrived, they found her body. The shock ignited a discussion in the industry about mental health after other similar incidents.
But you were more than a wrestler. You made miracles happen.
Number 15, Dino Bravo. Born in Italy and raised in Canada, Bravo became one of the Great White North's biggest wrestling stars, especially after he joined the then WWF in 1985. He remained there until 1992, having iconic matches with Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior during his stint. However, in 1993, Bravo's body was found at his home in Laval, Quebec. He'd been shot numerous times. The person responsible has never been found.
Then you hear all kind of different stories, about what happened. Well, was it a robbery? Was it a break-in? It was so sketchy on everything.
With Bravo being the nephew of crime boss Vincenzo Cotroni, it's believed the wrestler fell into organized crime and smuggled cigarettes into Canada. As such, it's speculated the mob had something to do with his murder.
I honestly think that when Dino was at the end of his days, that he may have done something that he wasn't supposed to. A lot of rumors run.
Number 14, Jimmy Snuka. Best known for his various stints at the WWF/WWE, Jimmy Superfly Snuka won many titles across multiple promotions throughout his career. However, in 1983, he was embroiled in a massive scandal, with run-ins with the police before suspected domestic abuse against his partner, Nancy Argentino. Officers arrived at a hotel in Allentown, Pennsylvania. They found a badly injured Argentino.
Basically dragged things out of him, and he just said that they must have wrestled a little bit too much.
Sadly, she died from her injuries, which included massive head trauma, as well as many cuts and bruises. Beyond Argentino's parents winning a default judgment against Snuka in 1985, he didn't face criminal consequences.
The Argentino family won a $500,000 default judgment against Snuka, who didn't show up.
That changed in 2015 when he was charged with murder. However, due to Snuka being declared unfit to stand trial, the case was eventually dropped shortly before his death.
His attorney had argued that his dementia was so bad that he didn't even realize what was going on.
Number 13, the Fabulous Moolah. On the surface, she was a pioneer in wrestling, becoming one of the most influential and famous women wrestlers to grace the sport in a career that began in 1949. However, allegedly, she took advantage of this prestige when she opened her own school.
She was a great professional wrestler, but she didn't know when to stop.
According to her former students, Moolah would take a hefty portion of their booking fees, even stealing money and claiming that the promoters had paid them little.
If you were a female wrestler at that point and you wanted to get booked, you pretty much had to go through Moolah or you weren't going to work.
She was also accused of sending women to promotions, promising officials intimate services for her students in exchange. In 2018, the allegations against Moolah resurfaced when the WWE planned the Fabulous Moolah Memorial Battle Royal at WrestleMania 34, before the company scrapped it based on the backlash. Number 12, Grizzly Smith.
The control that Grizz had over his kids. He could pit them all against each other.
The father of 3 professional wrestlers, Jake the Snake Roberts, Rockin' Robin, and Sam Houston, Smith was a wrestler in his own right, working for various NWA territories and the WWF. He later became a promoter and then a road agent with WCW. However, as detailed by his children, Smith was abusive to them and others.
My father was a mean man. Mean in the way that he tortured us psychologically.
According to Roberts, his father was dating his grandmother. Smith allegedly then forced himself on his partner's daughter, resulting in Roberts being born. According to the wrestling legend, this traumatic experience was a key contributor to his substance issues, something we'll get into in the next entry. Robin also came forward in a documentary to state she was a victim of Smith's abuse too.
He could be a hero, but to me, he was my monster.
Number 11, Jake the Snake Roberts. Everyone loves a comeback story, but many wrestling fans seriously doubted that one Jake the Snake Roberts would ever return from the brink of his personal abyss.
I remember crying myself to sleep many a night thinking my dad was going to die.
That's because Roberts overcame massive traumatic issues at home to become one of the business's most respected in-ring technicians, only to fall into the depths of addiction.
The only passion I had was wrestling, and to give it up. I had a life, but I poisoned it.
It wasn't until linking up with Diamond Dallas Page and getting clean where Roberts was able to return to the business he loved. Jake's struggles were even documented in the film The Resurrection of Jake the Snake, where all of his demons were set on full display for all to see.
But we will see at the Hall of Fame you're going in. Are you serious?
Number 10. The Ultimate Warrior. The Ultimate Warrior was a bodybuilder turned wrestler that seemed destined for in-ring stardom. He had the look and the energy, but he also had an ego.
He would fly off the handle very quickly, very hard to get along with, impossible to talk to.
The man born James Hellwig was so successful during his late 80s, early 90s peak that it seemed as if nothing could stop him. But Hellwig was his own worst enemy, as conflict with WWE owner Vince McMahon led to his departure from the company.
And Vince put his hand out and stopped him. He goes, "By the way, you're fired."
A second career as a conservative public speaker earned Warrior criticism for his homophobic rhetoric, although Hellwig did eventually patch things up with the WWE. Strangely, the Ultimate Warrior died from a heart attack mere days after being inducted into the company's Hall of Fame, and making a memorable return on Monday Night Raw.
He was leaving his hotel room, walking to the car the next morning, had a heart attack and died.
Number 9. The Von Erich family. It's called the Von Erich Curse, a string of horrific events that seem to follow the first family of Texas wrestling.
The Von Erichs were believable heroes to thousands of fans, but continual misfortune chipped away at their image.
There are simply no words to describe the electricity conducted by the old Texas Stadium and sportatorium brawls between the Freebirds and the Von Erichs. But just as crowds cheered on their hometown heroes, so too did they weep as brother after each Von Erich brother seemed to fall. Young Jack Jr. was accidentally electrocuted in 1959, Kerry, Chris, and Mike Von Erich soon after ended their own lives, while David Von Erich passed from enteritis in Japan.
When Dave died, I never got up from that.
Although Kevin Von Erich and his sons continue on the family legacy, fans have never forgotten that hard road in the rearview mirror.
Thought I was doing my best, and I was, but I was mad.
Number 8. Brian Pillman. Brian Pillman was a natural in the ring, a man seemingly born with everything it took to be a pro wrestling star. Charisma, looks, agility, and mic skills. The athlete once known as Flying Brian, or the Loose Cannon, was poised for greatness. However, as is the tragic case with so many professional wrestlers, a hectic travel schedule and personal demons eventually lead down the road of addiction.
He was sick, physically sick, with infection.
Ultimately, it was a heart attack brought on by atherosclerotic heart disease that caused Pillman's death on October 5th, 1997.
It's hard for me to still think about it today.
However, the WWE's decision to interview Brian's widow, Melanie, the next night on Monday Night Raw was primetime poor taste at its worst.
I didn't really think about not doing it, but nobody pressured me into it.
Number 7. Owen Hart.
Hanging in the air over 80 feet above the ring, he waits for his cue.
It's difficult for many wrestling fans to imagine the career of Owen Hart without the pain of wondering what he might be doing now. That's because the life of this incredibly influential performer was cut short on May 23, 1999, when he accidentally fell from the Kemper Arena rafters to the ring below.
I thought I heard screaming, and then I felt something brush against the side of my head.
Hart was preparing a ring entrance that required a quick release drop, only the mechanism let go too soon, leaving the fans watching at home and in the arena stunned. A lawsuit followed, with the WWE eventually settling with the Hart family for $18 million, but it was little comfort for the void Owen's loss left behind.
I do think that the measurable neglect that had to go into something so catastrophic cannot be overlooked.
Number 6. Bruiser Brody. Sometimes the line between character and performer can be incredibly blurry, while other times they couldn't be more different. Bruiser Brody was an absolute madman in the ring, coming across as unhinged during the incredibly violent encounters with contemporaries like Abdullah the Butcher. However, the man born Frank Goodish was actually a devoted family man with a wife and young son, the complete opposite to the protected character of the Bruiser. However, his time as a squared circle superstar was cut short on July 16, 1988, when he was attacked in the shower by a fellow wrestler, Jose Huertas Gonzalez, aka Invader 1.
Brody was halfway hunched over. I thought Jose punched him.
Medical response was slow to arrive, Brody succumbed to his injuries, and Gonzalez was acquitted of the crime in controversial fashion.
I said, what, they had a hearing? He said, no, they have a trial, they let him go for self-defense.
Number 5. Chyna. She was the 9th wonder of the world, an absolute phenomenon in the world of WWE's women's division, and a pioneer for female professional wrestlers around the world. Her name was Chyna, and she deserved better. Chyna's in-ring career was well regarded during her heyday of the late 90s into the early millennium, despite the WWE being largely concerned with objectifying women than raising them up during this time. Despite this, her exit from the company was complicated due to her former romantic involvement with current company COO Triple H, while Chyna's personal life devolved into addiction, reality television appearances, and an eventual career in adult films. She passed away after an accidental overdose in April 17, 2016.
It's a shocker for millions of wrestling fans. WWE legend Chyna has died.
Number 4. Nick Gage. For many, the world of professional wrestling is largely about the major leagues of WWE or AEW, but there also exists the vibrant world of indie wrestling.
I'm a leader of a gang called Murder, Death, Kill Gang.
And somewhere deep below that world lies the subculture of deathmatch wrestling. One king of this deathmatch style is Nick Gage, an absolutely brutal competitor in a world that applauds the most violent and unhinged antics imaginable. That said, Gage's personal life has seen painkiller addiction and homelessness in its rearview, while the hardcore icon even spent time in prison for robbing a bank in 2010.
This is a spur-of-the-moment thing, as you can see. They didn't even have a mask on.
Today, however, Nick Gage is a free man, although still as vicious and unpredictable as ever.
Do I have a death wish or nothing like that? No. But I feel like I'm gonna die sooner than later.
Number 3. New Jack. Our third pick was cut from a similar cloth as Nick Gage, an absolutely authentic slide of pro wrestling counterculture who was as dangerous as they come.
That was for justifiable homicide.
He once told the documentary crew for the 1999 film Beyond the Mat that he had 4 justifiable homicides. He critically injured multiple opponents during his hardcore wrestling career, and he was unapologetic to the very end.
I wanted him to hit the floor, I just didn't throw him hard enough.
New Jack was New Jack to the very end. Take it or leave it. He also competed to the very end as well, despite failing health and a history with painkillers. New Jack suffered a heart attack on May 14, 2021, leaving behind a complicated but compelling history of violence.
If I show up for a show and I go out there and do my thing, be grateful that I ain't attacking your ass. You know what I mean?
Number 2. Vince McMahon misconduct. Known for buying the WWF from his father and turning the company into the wrestling juggernaut that is WWE, McMahon balanced his promoting works with a villainous on-screen character.
It is a privilege, as always, to stand before you here tonight.
Apparently, art was imitating life, only in a far more sinister way. In 2022, it was discovered he had falsified accounts to use millions of the company's finances to pay several women for non-disclosure agreements. McMahon briefly retired from the WWE as a result.
Earlier tonight, my father, Vince McMahon, retired from WWE.
The same year, former wrestling referee Rita Chatterton issued a lawsuit against him for assault from 1986, which was settled out of court. In 2024, former WWE employee Janelle Grant issued a lawsuit against McMahon and other officials, including John Laurinaitis and Brock Lesnar, for trafficking and abuse.
McMahon denies any wrongdoing and calls a lawsuit against him, quote, a vindictive distortion of the truth.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure to go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Chris Benoit. It's difficult to come to terms with the amazing career of Chris Benoit and the horrifying fall from grace that was the man's personal life.
So I'm just half asleep and I see this text and I'm like, the heck is that?
Although he was once an in-ring mainstay, Benoit committed the unthinkable crime of murdering his wife and son before taking his own life on June 24th, 2007. It's important to note that concussion protocols weren't the same during Benoit's day as they are now, and images of Chris's brain showcase the toll that countless bouts of head trauma had on the wrestler. Of course, this changes nothing about the final outcome, but it offers a disturbing view into how the life of a wrestler can change someone from family man to madman.
What Chris did almost destroyed the only thing that he ever loved, from a professional standpoint.
Are there any other dark wrestling tales we missed from the list? Let us know in those comments below.
Put shaving cream on his head. He went splat and splatted on his head.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.